My entire life, I've felt like a story with the first chapter ripped out. But when the results of a 23andMe test landed in my inbox, I realized I wasn't just missing a chapter, I was a secret epilogue someone had tried to erase. The email notification pinged on a Tuesday morning, a perfectly ordinary Tuesday, and in the space of a single click, my ordinary life was set on fire. It wasn't the pie chart of my ancestry that made my breath catch in my throat, it was the section labeled DNA relatives. And at the very top of that list, under the heading Immediate Family, were two words that would change everything: Leo Rodriguez, half brother. I'd always known I was adopted. My parents, the only parents I've ever known, are amazing. They're the kind of people who framed my terrible kindergarten art and still have it hanging in the hallway. They were always open about my adoption story, or what little they knew of it. It was a closed adoption, the records sealed. My birth mother was young, not ready, and that was it. My birth father was a ghost, a blank space on a form. Growing up, it was a non-issue. I was loved, I was secure. But as I got older, a quiet hum of curiosity started in the back of my mind. It wasn't about wanting a new family, it was about understanding the first page of my own story. Who did I get my ridiculously curly hair from? My weirdly flexible thumbs? My inexplicable love for olives? The DNA kit was a birthday gift to myself, a casual, almost flippant decision made late one night while scrolling through Instagram. It felt like a harmless bit of fun, a way to finally confirm my suspicion that I was at least 2% Viking. I spat in the tube, mailed it off, and promptly forgot about it for 6 weeks. Until that Tuesday. Leo Rodriguez. Age range 15-17. The screen seemed to hum with the weight of those words. A brother. A half-brother. The implications crashed over me in waves. A shared parent. And since my birth mother was a teenager when she had me, it was unlikely she'd had another child just a decade later. That left one other possibility: my biological father. My fingers trembled as I typed Leo's name into every social media search bar I could think of. There were a dozen Leo Rodriguezes, but only one in the right age bracket living a few states over. His profile was public, and there he was. A smiling, goofy-looking kid with a mop of dark, curly hair so much like my own it was like looking at a distorted reflection in a funhouse mirror. He was wearing a soccer jersey, his arm slung around a girl who was probably his girlfriend. He looked happy. Normal. He had my nose. He had my smile. I spent the next 3 hours in a rabbit hole of his digital life. Photos from soccer practice, family vacations to the Grand Canyon, birthday parties with a sea of friends. His feed was a curated slice of idyllic suburban American life. And then I found him. In a family photo posted 2 Christmases ago, standing proudly behind Leo, was a man with his hands on his son's shoulders. He had the same dark, curly hair, the same nose, the same smile. He was older, his temples dusted with gray, but the resemblance was undeniable. He was looking at Leo with a kind of paternal adoration that made my chest physically ache. Standing next to him was a smiling, blonde woman, her arm linked through his. Sarah, according to the tags. And the caption, written by her, read, "My two favorite guys. So much love for my beautiful family." I felt a dizzying mix of nausea and a strange, hollow sort of vindication. He was real. The ghost had a name, a face, a life. My biological father, a man I now knew was named Mark Rodriguez, hadn't just disappeared. He'd started over. He'd built a new life, a perfect family, a whole new story where my chapter was not just ripped out but seemingly never written. I stared at the screen, at the smiling faces of this family who had no idea I existed. A part of me, the part that had always felt a little adrift, soared with the discovery. I had roots. I had a connection. But a much larger, colder part of me felt a rising dread. I wasn't just a secret. I was a secret that could shatter everything they held dear. The next few days were a blur of obsessive cyberstalking. I felt like a private detective in a case where I was both the investigator and the crime scene. I learned that Mark was a successful architect. He designed minimalist, eco friendly homes that were probably featured in glossy magazines. Sarah, his wife, ran a local bakery that specialized in elaborate, custom cakes. Their digital footprint painted a picture of a perfect, upper middle class life. They were a pillar of their community, involved in the PTA, local charities, the whole 9 yards. They were, in every sense of the word, happy. And I was the ticking time bomb they didn't know was planted under their beautiful, architect designed home. My own life, which had felt so complete and full just a week ago, now seemed flimsy and provisional. My job as a graphic designer felt trivial. Conversations with friends felt distant, like I was watching them through a pane of thick glass. How could I talk about a frustrating client or a bad date when my entire sense of self had been fundamentally fractured? My adoptive mom, sensing something was wrong, called me every day. "You're quiet, sweetie. Is everything okay?" She'd ask, her voice laced with a gentle concern that had been the soundtrack of my life. And I'd lie. "Just tired, Mom. Work's been crazy." The lie felt like a stone in my stomach. I was protecting them, too. How could I tell them that the biological parents who had been a vague, abstract concept for 28 years had suddenly materialized, and that their existence threatened to complicate the beautiful, simple love we shared? My obsession narrowed, focusing more and more on Leo. He was the innocent in all of this. A kid whose biggest worry seemed to be whether he'd make the varsity soccer team. I watched his Instagram stories, short, pixelated glimpses into a life I could have been a part of. He and his dad, our dad, at a baseball game. He and his mom baking a ridiculously complex looking cake in their sun drenched kitchen. Each post was a fresh stab of longing and guilt. Who was I to disrupt this? To walk into this boy's life and tell him his father, his hero, had a secret daughter? That the foundation of his perfect family was built on a lie of omission? The moral calculus was dizzying. My right to know my history versus their right to their happiness. My need for connection versus the potential for their devastation. I drafted a dozen different messages to Mark. I found him on LinkedIn, the only social media he seemed to have. The messages ranged from polite and detached Mr. Rodriguez, "I believe we may be related," raw and accusatory, "How could you pretend I don't exist?" I typed them out, my heart pounding, and then deleted every single one. Each time my cursor hovered over the send button, I'd see Sarah's smiling face or Leo's goofy grin, and I'd feel like a homewrecker. A monster. So I did nothing. I just watched, a ghost haunting their digital lives, trapped in a limbo of my own making. The discovery that changed everything came late one night. I was scrolling back through months of Leo's posts, looking for I don't even know what. A sign, a crack in the perfect facade. And then I saw it. A post from about 6 months ago. It was a picture of him in a hospital bed, looking pale but giving a weak thumbs up. The caption read, "Well, this isn't how I planned to spend my spring break. Turns out my heart has a weird rhythm. Diagnosed with something called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's genetic, but the docs say with meds and taking it easy, I'll be fine. No more competitive soccer for a while though, which sucks. But hey, at least I get to miss school for a week." I read it once, then twice. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The name was a jumble of clinical sounding syllables, but the word genetic hit me like a physical blow. I frantically Googled the condition. It was a disease where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, making it harder for the heart to pump blood. It's often inherited, and it can be serious. It's a leading cause of sudden cardiac death in young athletes. Suddenly, my dilemma wasn't just about my feelings or their happiness anymore. It was about Leo's health. I might carry the same gene, Or worse, I might have medical records from my birth mother, sealed away somewhere, that could contain information crucial to his treatment. The stakes had just been raised from emotional to a matter of life and death. The knowledge of Leo's heart condition shifted the ground beneath my feet. The moral dilemma was no longer a philosophical debate I was having with myself, it was a ticking clock. The question transformed from do I have the right to disrupt their lives to do I have a moral obligation to intervene? I spent the entire weekend holed up in my apartment, mainlining coffee and diving into medical journals and forums about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM. I learned that genetic testing could identify the specific mutation causing the condition, which could inform treatment and prognosis. I learned that family medical history was critical. My sealed adoption records, once a symbol of my lost past, now felt like a locked treasure chest that might hold a key to my brother's future. Finally, breaking my silence, I called my mom. I sat on my kitchen floor, the phone pressed hard against my ear, and told her everything. The DNA test, the half brother, the perfect family, the secret father. Her silence on the other end of the line was heavy, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I'd hurt her, that my search for my biological roots felt like a rejection of her. But when she finally spoke, her voice was soft, laced with nothing but love and concern. "Oh, honey, that's a lot to carry on your own. We talked for hours." She didn't offer easy answers because there were none. But she listened. She validated my turmoil, my fear, my anger. "He had a responsibility to you, Chloe," she said, a rare edge of steel in her voice. "But Leo is a child. He's the innocent party here." She was right. We both knew it. My dad's reaction was more pragmatic. "What are your options?" he asked that evening, the three of us on a conference call. "Legally, can you unseal the records now? What would it take?" His practical approach was grounding. He was already seeing it as a problem to be solved, a puzzle to be figured out. With their support, I felt a surge of resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. I contacted the adoption agency that handled my case. The answer was what I expected, a bureaucratic brick wall. Unsealing records in my state was a Herculean task, requiring a court order and a compelling reason. A potential genetic link might not be enough. The fastest way, the only truly guaranteed way, to get the information I needed was to go straight to the source, Mark. The decision was made, but the execution was terrifying. This wasn't a LinkedIn message I could delete. This was real. I decided against an email or a phone call. It felt too impersonal, too easy to ignore or misunderstand. I had to do it in person. It felt insane, like something out of a movie. I found the address for Mark's architecture firm online. It was in a trendy, converted warehouse district in a city about a 4-hour drive away. I told my boss I had a family emergency and took 2 days off. The entire drive there was an out-of-body experience. My hands were slick on the steering wheel, and my stomach was a knot of anxiety. What was I going to say? "Hi, I'm the daughter you abandoned 28 years ago. Let's talk about our son's heart condition?" I parked my car across the street from his office, a sleek, modern building with huge glass windows. I must have sat there for an hour, watching people in crisp designer clothes come and go. I saw him twice. Once when he went out to grab a coffee, laughing with a colleague. He looked so normal, so carefree. The second time, he was leaving for the day. He walked out, checked his phone, and smiled at something he read. He looked like any other successful, happy man heading home to his family. My family. Our family. My courage evaporated. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the person who walks into that man's life and detonates it. I was about to put the car in drive and flee, to just go home and try to forget everything, to live with the ghost of this knowledge forever. But then, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Instagram. Leo had posted a new picture. It was him, sitting on the sidelines of a soccer field, watching his team play. The caption was just a single broken heart emoji. The sight of it, his quiet, public sadness, broke something open in me. This wasn't about Mark's perfect life anymore. It was about that boy on the bench. My brother. I put the car in park, took a deep, shuddering breath, and got out. I walked into the lobby of Mark's firm, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The air was cool and smelled faintly of coffee and expensive paper. A chic receptionist with an intimidatingly perfect haircut looked up from her screen. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone professionally bland. My voice came out as a squeak. "I'm here to see Mark Rodriguez. I don't have an appointment." She gave me a once-over, my rumpled travel clothes clearly not up to the firm's aesthetic standards. "He's just about to leave for the day. Is he expecting you?" I shook my head, my mouth suddenly dry. "No, but it's a personal matter. It's urgent." I must have looked as desperate as I felt because her expression softened slightly. She picked up her phone, spoke his name, and a moment later, she nodded towards a hallway. "He'll see you in his office. Last door on the right." The walk down that hallway felt like a mile. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there he was, standing by a large window that overlooked the city, shrugging on his jacket. He turned, a polite, professional smile on his face that faltered the moment he saw me. He didn't know who I was, of course, but his eyes widened slightly in confusion, a flicker of something recognition? No, it couldn't be. It was more like a sense of dissonance, as if his brain was trying to place a face that was both alien and familiar. My face. The one that shared his nose, his hair, his smile. "I'm sorry to bother you," I started, my voice trembling. "My name is Chloe. Chloe Miller." The name meant nothing to him. His expression remained one of polite confusion. "Do we know each other?" I took a breath and said the words that had been circling in my head for weeks. "I was born on May 12th, 1997, in St. Jude's Hospital. My birth mother was a student at the university here." I watched his face as I spoke. It was like watching a building crumble in slow motion. The color drained from his skin. The polite smile vanished, replaced by a mask of stunned horror. He knew. Of course, he knew. He stumbled back a step, leaning against his desk as if his legs could no longer support him. How did you find me?" he whispered, his voice raspy. "A DNA test," I said, my own voice flat, devoid of the emotion churning inside me. "I matched with your son. With Leo." His head snapped up at the mention of his son's name. Panic flared in his eyes. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. "Do you want money? Is that it?" The accusation stung, but I pushed through it. "No, I don't want anything from you. Not for me. This is about Leo. I know about his heart condition. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's genetic, Mark." I saw his post. The clinical term, coming from my lips, seemed to shatter the last of his composure. He sank into his chair, running his hands through his hair. "Sarah doesn't know," he choked out. "My wife Leo, they don't know about you." "I figured as much," I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. "But this is bigger than that now. I might have the same gene. My birth mother's medical history, my medical history, could be important for his treatment. We are a part of his genetic puzzle. And you've been hiding half the pieces from him." The conversation that followed wasn't a dramatic confrontation. There was no shouting, no tears. It was a hollow, broken thing. He admitted everything in a low, defeated monotone. He was a kid, he'd been scared, he'd made a mistake, and he'd spent the last 28 years trying to pretend it never happened. He'd built a life on that denial. We didn't solve anything in that office. There was no tearful reunion, no easy absolution. I left him with my phone number and the name of the adoption agency, a man utterly broken by the ghost of his past. He promised he would talk to Sarah, that he would tell Leo. He promised to do the right thing, finally. But as I drove away from that sleek, glass building, I had no idea what he would actually do. Did I do the right thing? I still don't know. I might have saved my brother's life, or I might have just destroyed it. I shattered a family's reality, a boy's image of his father, a woman's trust in her husband. All I know for sure is that my story is no longer missing its first chapter. But I might have just written a tragic ending for someone else's. So tell me, what would you have done? Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. We appreciate everyone and can't wait to bring more stories your way.